For more now on the state of Egypt today, I'm joined by our foreign affairs editor, Philip Turle. Hi, Philip. 10 years on, is Egypt literally back to square one?
I think that is the conclusion of many human rights groups who say that the people of Egypt, are even worse off now than they were back in 2011 when those protests began in Egypt's Tahrir Square, which led pretty quickly to the overthrow of the country's then President Hosni Mubarak, who'd been in power for 30 years and brought into power after the elections in 2012 Mohammed Morsi, who was backed by the Muslim Brotherhood, the first elected civilian president in Egypt. His time in office didn't last very long. Just a year and a half later, he was overthrown following massive street protests, which brought into power the current president, Abdel Fatah al-Sisi, who is a former defense minister. And since then, there has been a very big clampdown on the press, on dissidents, on the opposition, silencing out any kind of voice that speaks against the rulers of Egypt. Now, you can look at human rights in Egypt, for example. We have a slide to show you which shows that press freedom, according to Reporters Without Borders, is now 166 out of 180 nations, so very, very far down. There are over 60 journalists who are imprisoned. That's according to the International Press Institute. Corruption is listed at 106 out of 180 by Transparency International. And according to Amnesty International, there's been a real frenzy of executions in the latter part of last year, 57 in October and November, men and women executed. That is double the amount of the whole of 2019. So 60,000 political prisoners are believed to be behind bars, many of them from the Muslim Brotherhood, who are being blamed for being Islamist terrorists, which, of course, they are not involved in. But the rulers of Egypt have decided to snuff out any type of revolt against the leadership and any kind of journalism that is not given the green light by the rulers of the country. In that case, the journalists risk going to prison.
Philip, just as you were speaking a moment ago, we saw those pictures of the Egyptian president being welcomed at the Élysée presidential palace here in France by the French president Emmanuel Macron. Given what you're just saying, why would France roll out the red carpet for the Egyptian president?
Well, the Egyptian economy is doing quite well at the moment. The unemployment rate has gone down to 8.3%, GDP is at 3.5%, and the growth forecast is 3.5%, the second highest in the world. So France knows that Egypt has money to spend, and France has arms to sell. So it is selling weapons to Egypt. For example, it has sold Mistral-class helicopter carriers. It sold 24 Rafale advanced fighter jets since 2015 to the Egyptian authorities. So France is keen to keep that market going because it's important for supporting French industry. And the other reason that France is keen to keep relations strong with Egypt is because it sees Egypt as a key regional player, one of the most stable countries, despite what's going on in the country. But France and Egypt see eye to eye on the activity of Turkey in the Eastern Mediterranean, for example. They see eye to eye on what is going on in Libya. They also see eye to eye in the fight against terrorism. So Emmanuel Macron is keen to keep a very good working relationship with the Egyptian president. This, of course, has angered many human rights organizations who said to President Macron in December when President Sisi came to France on the 7th of December that he should not roll out the red carpet. The response from President Macron, there it is. It's better to maintain a policy of strict dialogue rather than a boycott, which would reduce the efficiency of our partnership in the fight against terrorism and regional stability. But the fact of the matter is that France is in an embarrassing position because it knows that human rights are not being respected in Egypt. It knows that the press is not being respected and journalists are being persecuted. It knows that political dissidents are being thrown in jail. But at the same time, it knows it needs Egypt as a key regional player to support France, and France needs to support Egypt as well. So the response from Emmanuel Macron is, well, yes, I am talking about human rights as I would to a friend, and that is all I'm going to do, but I'm not going to put it as a condition for sales of weapons to Egypt. And the response from those human rights groups has been, well, don't roll out the red carpet. You have to pass from words to acts and stop selling arms and electronic surveillance equipment to Egypt, which is being used against the people of Egypt.
Philip, thank you for that. France 24's Philip Turle.